It's moving.
Good enough.
Take
What
me
you got?
to your leader. Oh, hell no. Yo, we got aliens out here, dog.
My phone camera says
Yo, it's weird.
we got UFOs outside.
Yo, hey, everyone's out here.
You're still going clear, or what do you suggest?
Hey everyone, what's up? Larry here, back once again with your source for Universal News and Mysteries, Interstellar Happenings. Today we're going to be diving deep into the heart of the Mojave Desert, a hotbed for UFO activity. The Mojave has a long history of strange occurrences. Remember George Adamski? Adamski was a Polish-American author who became widely known in UFO circles and to some degree in popular culture, after he claimed to have photographed spaceships from other planets.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. The photograph that we have on camera now, George, is this a photograph of a mothership?
Well, this is a photograph of a mothership right here. And these here are saucers which this mothership have released to come, we call scouting around.
Is the mothership actually cigar-shaped, or is that a distortion?
No, it's a cigar shape with a blunt nose and a blunt end.
Now, you are starting to describe the interior.
That's correct.
So, supposing we use this, I think this will be of interest, and if you'll be kind enough to describe it, please.
This chute here is the one they let out the scout ships from, down to the bottom. This chute here, when they come back, return to land like they do on a flat top and go inside. And this is a rail right in here where they park. And down here are the quarters. The pilots are in this section as well as in this section. You can go backwards or forwards if it's necessary, as well as sideways, and so forth. So the pilots, while the quarters are all underneath, this is a magnetic rail on which the saucer, so-called, rests when it gets back there, and they must be charged. They can't accumulate the power themselves, so they're usually charged by the mothership in most cases. Now, they watch every movement the pilots do in there by big brads, similar to a neon sign of many colors. And as these colors come up in intensity in various angles, that's when they know how the ship is behaving, what the field force to the outside is, and they don't do nothing about it except push buttons in a case like that. There's a big robot system. The whole thing is operated by a robot. The ship are moving so fast that even their human mind, further advanced than ours, could not cope with.
How do you know that their minds are further advanced than ours?
His most famous alleged encounter occurred in 1952, where he said he had met a Venetian named Orthon. Adamski described Orthon as a humanoid being with long blonde hair, and he claimed that Orthon communicated with him telepathically. This encounter, along with the photographs that Adamski took of UFOs, brought him a great deal of attention during this time and made him one of the most well-known figures in the field of UFOlogy. Adamski's 1952 Mojave Desert sighting was particularly significant. He claimed that he was taken aboard Orthon's spaceship, where he was given messages to relay to the people of Earth. These messages generally revolved around what we've heard before: peace and the dangers of nuclear war. Adamski's claims were met with a mix of belief and skepticism. While many in the UFO community have embraced his stories and saw him as a kind of ambassador for extraterrestrial beings, others have doubted his veracity and his claims. More than any other photographs of extraterrestrial spacecraft, George Adamski's have been a bone of contention, mostly because the way skeptics have set up their argument. UFO photos that are fuzzy and don't prove anything. The 1950s with weather balloons. The 2010s, they were drones. And if they're really detailed, well, they're simply just too good to be true, so they must have been faked. And with today's AI, that seems to be the go-to solution. Despite the controversy surrounding his alleged encounters, Adamski's stories continue to be the topic of interest and discussion in the field of UFOlogy to this day. He was the first and the most famous of the so-called contactees of the 1950s. Adamski called himself a philosopher, teacher, student, and sorcerer. His sightings even come with vintage photos and a video which has been highly scrutinized and controversial.
Bob Oechsler, a robotics engineer and former mission specialist of the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, is also convinced of the Rodopher film's authenticity. He believes the flight pattern indicates an energy field which enables the disk to maneuver independently of terrestrial gravitation.
The individual images as they came up clearly showed something that you could not see with the naked eye in looking at the film or even looking at the individual prints under close scrutiny, and that there was a haze, if you will, a very tight haze, almost like a fuzzy outline around the craft itself on the image. Now, this, of course, compared to the trees that are visible in the film, which were crystal clear and very well in focus. In other words, you have a very sharp contrast. You immediately might be concerned about the possibility of capabilities of double exposure, which is, of course, very difficult to do with film. However, in this particular case, we found it very, very intriguing that the craft itself had very, very sharp contrasting edges along where the porthole areas are and around the top of the cab. But especially in the bottom portion of the craft, we began to see that there was light emitting from the craft, but this was not a light such as a glow, like a reflection you'd get if somebody was projecting a light onto an object. This was rather interesting because it tended to suggest that there was some form of energy associated with the vehicle itself that was actually causing this sort of a red glow in the undercarriage area. But that, along with the glow that we were getting, the sort of a haze, a very, very distinct fine haze around and very, very close to the craft itself through the images, suggested that there was an actual radiation effect. Almost, I guess you could liken it to a mirage effect. People are fairly familiar with when you ride down the highway during the summer and you look across and you can see the heat rising, and it tends to distort images that were behind the mirage. Well, this is very similar to the effect that we saw on this object, suggesting several things. One, that you were actually looking at a three-dimensional object as something that was superimposed onto the film. That again suggested credibility with regard to the film, and secondly, it suggested that there was technology associated with it. This was not just a trash can lid or something that was just casually thrown up in the air while filming was going on. So began to become much more encouraged with what I was seeing. The more I began to look into the individual segments, the film itself, the motion, we began to see things that you might liken to a distortion. In other words, the craft itself physically changed shape. Now, not the whole craft, but it seemed that portions of the craft changed shape. Now, this was a product either of what you might call an optical illusion as a result of the technology associated with the craft, the method that it used to maintain its levitated state to violate gravity, or it was a mechanical apparatus associated with the craft itself. We noticed that the ball structure in the bottom of the craft, in concert with the receding of these individual structures, that the one portion of the craft had an indentation that would go in every time this one ball would go up, and then it would come back out into a round disc, or circular area. So I think that these features all collectively, more than anything else, and even more than the testimony of Madeline Rodopher herself and the historical testimony of George Adamski prior to his death regarding this particular event, all tend to suggest that we're probably dealing with an authentic case, and I think it's time that perhaps some researchers of historical value would probably want to go back and take a much closer look at the George Adamski case in its entirety.
Still looking at the object here, it looks eerily familiar to the Bob Lazar description of the UFO he worked on at S4.
And these are the gravity amplifiers themselves. Looking down from the top, you'd have the center. In the very center, there is a small reactor in 3 equally spaced areas are the amplifiers. So this is looking at it sideways, this is looking at it down from the top. And under these amplifiers, underneath, the floor below, are the gravity emitters. So it's the reactor here powering the gravity amplifiers. Gravity amplifiers output goes into the gravity emitters at the bottom, and the resulting gravity beam or anti-gravity wave can be pretty much put anywhere you want it to. There is a level above which consisted of these two areas that I'm not all that familiar with. I assume these to be some sort of navigational engine. People call these large black rectangular areas on the top portholes. I believe they were some planar sensor array that just took in information from the surrounding area to make determinations here. That takes input from those sensors and then let the craft know how to orient itself and where it was in space. The center antenna is really an extension of the reactor in the center, and that's a waveguide, which allows the emission of the gravity wave, which forms kind of a heart shape over the whole craft. That's how it creates its distortion.
We have the dots here, the gravity amplifier, the gravity field generator, or it could just be a streetlight. I don't really know, but if it is, what about George Van Tassel? Now here's a story. This guy was an aircraft mechanic working at Douglas Aircraft, Howard Hughes, Lockheed Martin. He also claims to have received cosmic wisdom from extraterrestrials. He even built a structure called the Integratron in the Mojave Desert, which he said was for scientific research into time, anti-gravity, and extending human life.
Where did this formula come from?
I love that Scotch accent. Jack, the formula came from a ship that landed at my airport in 1953 on August the 24th, which had 4 people aboard it that came from another planet.
I'm breathless.
Well, you're not only breathless, I was breathless.
But I'm cynical, too.
Well, that's fine. That's the way to be. In fact, I'm a bigger skeptic than you are of many things.
I'm an unbeliever. Convince me that this really happened to you.
Well, this thing is very similar to a thing that happened in our biblical records where a Lord presented Moses with a pattern to build a tabernacle. They came out of the sky, they handed him stone tablets, and this phenomena that's taking place today is as old as our history, as our civilization. This isn't anything new that's occurring. It's something that's being continued in another time of crisis when conditions affecting the people of this planet are reaching a point where somebody has to take care of the situation.
Van Tassel began construction of the Integratron in 1953. Using only fiberglass and wood in this construction, there are absolutely no nails used in this building. While building the Integratron and running the airport and its cafe, Van Tassel also held large annual UFO conventions to raise money for his projects. One year, over 11,000 people attended. It's rumored that Howard Hughes actually helped fund the Integratron. So stay with me, because it's going to get weirder. George Van Tassel was a significant figure associated with Giant Rock in the Mojave Desert. He was a friend of Frank Kritzer, a prospector who lived in a 400 square foot hollow underneath the massive boulder. Kritzer claimed to have discovered glass-lined tunnels under the rock that went deep into the ground. He built his home here near these tunnels and often reported hearing static coming from underneath the rock. Now, I'm going to say that word again. Tunnels. As it's actually going to play a pretty big part of this video. After Kritzer's death and an explosion in a police raid in 1942, Van Tassel took over the Giant Rock location. He officially acquired the property after the war and moved here with his family. He restored some of the rooms under the rock for storage and expanded on the Giant Rock Airport, which Kritzer had constructed. Van Tassel and his family lived here in the area for over 20 years. Today, the rooms under the Giant Rock have been filled in, and the glass tunnels have never been located and remain a mystery. And then there's the story of Anjali, a retired intelligence officer who claims to have met extraterrestrials in a hidden base in the Mojave, which we'll be coming back to at the end of this video. Trust me, you're gonna want to stay for it. Shit's about to get weird, guys. Could it be that Van Tassel was actually onto something? So let's keep going down this rabbit hole, or should I say, tunnel. So now, let's go ahead and fast forward to December 2018. A video surfaced showing a strange object hovering in the sky over the Mojave. This wasn't just a blurry, far-off speck. This was a clear, close-up shot of something that definitely wasn't a plane or a helicopter. And it wasn't the only sighting. On July 4th, 1997, and again in April 2018, witnesses reported seeing unexplained lights in the sky. This goes on all the time in the Mojave Desert. Now, I know this all sounds far-fetched, but remember the Phoenix Lights? That was a mass UFO sighting over Phoenix, Arizona, not too far from the Mojave. Thousands of people actually saw this V-shaped object with lights hovering in the sky. And guess what? That's the same thing that was seen with this new sighting released by Jeremy Corbell and weaponized. First, I actually want to give them a credit for this video I'm about to show you that occurred over the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center, 29 Palms. The startling incident unfolded on the evening of April 20th, 2021, and lasted for approximately 10 minutes. Videos shot by the Marines at the military base with their smartphones seem to reveal the presence of 5 luminous objects arranged in a distinct triangular configuration. The footage was brought to light by journalists Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp.
We all came out and looked, and then slowly, like 50 plus people started coming out and looking. Those lights appeared out of nowhere.
Obviously, a lot of people saw this. What did people think?
They were just kind of like baffled. Nobody could recognize it. I mean, we're all in the military, so you'd think we'd...
This happened in a number of places. I've got reports from other people, they're coming in. The video you sent me, was that yours?
Yes, that was mine. That was from my iPhone.
And the photo, was that a still photo or pulled from the video?
It was a still photo. If you look in the picture, you can see like a black triangular shape.
Why are these not flares?
Because they stayed there for a solid 10 minutes, just in the same spot.
And flares don't sit in one spot for 10 minutes?
No, they fall.
So you personally know that these were not flares. Do you believe this was a craft?
Yeah, I would have to believe so. With the picture I took with the black triangular shape underneath the lights, it's definitely not any type of like flare or illumination rounds or anything.
I didn't mean to butt in, but I work with artillery, and we shoot illumination rounds out of our arty guns into the air to illume infantry guys. And this was nothing compared to what that is. Like, this was something none of us had ever seen before. It was a completely different color. The size of the illumination was different. And when we shoot illumination rounds, it's one, you shoot it in the air and let it drop, and then you shoot another one. This was like, obviously you've seen the picture, this was like 5 right next to each other, and they're kind of reddish, and our illume rounds are like a yellow-white color.
So this was a craft. Was it hovering, stationary? Was there any sound?
There was absolutely no sound.
No sound, but it was definitely stationary.
How big was it? Estimate to me, how big?
Compared to one of those stealth bombers, the size.
Well, hold on. Stealth bombers can't hover.
Exactly, that's why I can compare it to that, but that's how I know it wasn't that.
I would say the size of like 3-bedroom house. I don't know. Maybe bigger.
You said that there were like objects that came out and like circled it right after, and then it went dark? What do you mean?
So right before they went out, the illume rounds popped off over top of it. Those 2 orange lights, the actual illume rounds that went up over top of it, and then after that, it disappeared.
This discussion has sparked a significant debate. The crux of this argument lies in a photo that has left many puzzled. Some firmly believe it captures an unexplained aerial phenomenon, while others are convinced it's merely just flares. Even George Knapp himself, one of the figures in releasing this content, has acknowledged the possibility of the flare explanation. The startling incident unfolded on the evening of April 20th, 2021, and lasted for approximately 10 minutes. Videos shot by Marines at the military base with their smartphones seem to reveal the presence of 5 luminous objects arranged in a distinct triangular configuration. Eyewitnesses reported that the craft was completely silent throughout the entire sighting. Although precise measurements were challenging, estimations placed the size of the unidentified object somewhere between half the size of a football field and a 3-bedroom, 2-story house. Can you imagine seeing something like that? That big, just hovering in the sky above you. It's eerily similar to the Phoenix Lights incident. Don't you guys think? I mean, you have to see it, and it's completely silent. No noise, no boom, nothing. Just a silent, hovering triangle in the night sky. But what is it? So let's get right to it and let's scrutinize this photo. What you're witnessing here are 5 arranged lights, like we said before, in a triangular formation, hence the name the Mojave Triangle. These lights seem to exhibit a structure, or as some have intriguingly described it, meat on the bone. But could these lights simply be just flares? It is known that at 8:29 p.m. illumination rounds were discharged above the craft, and this extraordinary occurrence was documented by the witnesses. However, at approximately 8:30, just before the illumination rounds reached the useful proximity to the unidentified craft, it was reported to have abruptly blinked out or vanished from sight. But let's go ahead and look a little deeper into this. Let's extract some images. Some argue that the smoke and artifacts from digital processing could create an illusion quite similar to this, giving the object a structure. Others point out that the light's movement and formation are more consistent with flares than with a solid object. Of course, investigative journalist and documentary filmmaker Jeremy Corbell has a different perspective on all this.
We're trying to identify something that happened over a military base with a lot of military service members all around. We reached out to the Pentagon. I know the Marine that you spoke to said that they ruled out flares, but the Pentagon tells us that there was an airspace tactics and instructor course happening around the same time, and there's video of that training. I think we have some of that video that has been declassified. You can see choppers through night vision, you can see tracer fire, you can see flares, and then right at the end there are a couple of seconds showing something it's kind of in a similar shape to that triangle. Do you think that that could be the same thing? Some of this exercise that you're seeing right here, those appear to be flares, kind of in a triangle shape. Do you think that that could be what these Marines saw?
Yeah, so that's the question, is were these flares? The problem is the duration, and all of the witnesses that saw the body of a triangular shaped craft. So initially that was my thought, but over these years from working with people, they saw the craft itself, the body of it, and that's what you see in that low light video. Now I don't know, it's a huge base, it's almost 1,000 miles wide. So showing me a video, we need to know if it identically matches up to the time. Look, I'm trying to solve the case too, but I can't discount the Marines that are telling me they saw the craft.
And you never really want to 100% disregard eyewitnesses. Photos can be manipulated, videos can be edited, and yes, people can lie. But in a situation like this, you have to ask yourself, why? There were 50 Marines in all of whom were trained observers, well-versed in identifying aircraft and other aerial phenomena. Despite their training and experience, they were left dumbfounded. They claimed that a significant air and ground response was initiated during this time, lasting for approximately 3 hours after the mass sighting.
Like just straight went black, and then helicopters started like hauling ass towards it. and they went like in the direction of it, and then they started circling the area.
These helicopters were circling for a good bit afterwards. And there was a convoy as well that went out. It was like a 60-plus truck convoy that we saw go out as well.
We were taking pictures afterwards. It was just straight black. It just disappeared.
What do you think you saw?
I couldn't tell you. I just know it's not anything that I recognized or any of my close friends could recognize either. So I don't think it was anything U.S. military. Definitely some type of UFO, and government was trying to look for it after it disappeared. I'm just trying to figure out what the hell that was.
This is a highly documented event. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah. Like through exercises, we've worked with a lot of people who use different type of weapons. So I've never seen anything like it.
What do you think? Does it show the outline of a craft? Or does it just add more credence to the flare theory? Let me know in the comments. I want to get your opinions on this one. Is it a trick of light? Possibly. It's hard to tell. Of course, many in the community believe Corbell and Knapp have monetary interest in all this phenomena. But at the same time, I have to defend them just a little bit here. Sure, some of what they have brought to us over the years seems a little bit out there. Sometimes you do get the feeling that there is monetary compensation behind the scenes that has them very interested in this phenomena more than what meets the eye. But they have also introduced us to some pretty legit sightings. You get one, you give one. I also ran into a strange and unusual webpage which applies what I believe it's Euclidean constructive geometry to the Phoenix Lights and the Mojave Triangle. Now, I'm not going to argue for this individual who states in this article that he speaks to extraterrestrials through dreams. But the math holds up here fairly well. They argue that the lights express a clear, distinct geometry, suggesting an intelligent and intentional communication using the universal language of geometry. This geometric analysis reveals that we might be dealing with mathematical objects. Want even more mind-boggling fodder for your mind? Lockheed Martin, specifically located in Palmdale, California, and is also the location of the most secretive aircraft design and production program, well, in the history of history, known as Skunksworks. Yes, that's right, guys, you guessed it. It's in the Mojave Desert. How far from 29 Palms, you ask? Just a mere 122 miles. But this isn't over yet. Remember Anjali?
Transparency and full disclosure and honesty is the only thing that I want here. And I am looking for those people who can help us all deliver that. Because the beings need us to be ready for contact.
Here's where things get really interesting. Some people believe that this sighting is connected to the claims made by Anjali here. Just 119 days after this sighting in 29 Palms, she held a press conference on August 17th, 2021 at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C.
I entered the tunnel with 4 people, Wayne and Trisha, and another couple whom they're no longer
During this event, she announced that she had met aliens in a cave in the Mojave Desert.
Fine, white hair, warm, not cool colored, a warmish white, but their skin, they're radiant. They have, it's nearly alabaster.
And planned to lead a group of scientists into the cave on December 21st, 2021 for a face-to-face meeting with these extraterrestrial beings.
I would like to talk about the formation of a team that will return to this tunnel, and with me and the owners of this property, this team will enter the base of these higher beings.
This announcement sparked a wave of interest and skepticism. Many people expressed their desire to be part of the group that would enter this cave, while others dismissed her claims as just another wild contactee story. Despite the skepticism, talk show hosts lined up for interviews, and people tried to locate this cave. However, December 21st came, and then it went, and the planned event didn't take place. This led to, of course, further skepticism. But what really happened? Well, Anjali had initially planned an expedition to this tunnel, which she described as the ultimate disclosure event. She even started a Twitter poll to determine who should accompany them as community representatives. However, this expedition did not materialize due to complications. The supposed location of the tunnel was on the property of a couple named Wayne and Tricia, who denied permission for the expedition. Wayne and Tricia said they had met Anjali in a coffee shop and had a casual conversation about UFO sightings in the area. During this visit, they consumed a potent cannabis oil. An ambulance was eventually apparently called for a welfare check due to Angelina's daughter's concerns. Anjali was then picked up by her friend the very next day. After this, they had no further contact with Anjali. At least, that's their story. I don't know about you, but I have never heard of cannabis making people see aliens inside caves.
Holy bejesus.
But some speculated whether maybe she had possibly been part of a intelligence operation, or whether this was just a giant hoax that maybe contained some element of truth. You just really can't make this shit up, guys. Despite the denial by Wayne and Tricia, Anjali continues to assert that she had an alien experience inside a tunnel. I know this all sounds kind of batshit crazy, but this whole thing going on right now, what if there is something to all of this? The Phoenix Lights, the Integratron, giant rocks, tunnels, Skunksworks, Adamski, Anjali, sightings, out the wazoo. This is the Mojave Desert, guys. No light pollution, dry weather. It makes for beautiful gazing, and it also makes for the perfect conditions to see everything in the night sky and what's not supposed to be there. But the end question is, does this all connect in some way? Could the caves under the giant rocks be linked? Could the 119 days between the sighting and Anjali's conference just be a coincidence? The Phoenix Lights, the similarities between these two sightings? Or do I just have the Mojave madness? I don't really know. It's probably nothing. But you know what isn't nothing? The Mojave Desert. There's something going on out there, guys, and it's completely silent. And what's the government's response to all this? You guessed it. Nothing. Just a paper trail. While years of hard evidence has been coming forth, redacted paperwork is supposed to answer our questions. I don't think so. Maybe it's time to take a trip to Mojave and check this one out for myself. As always, we're left with more questions than answers. But one thing's for sure, the Mojave is full of mysteries, and we're just starting to scratch the surface. So keep looking up, keep asking questions, and remember, the truth is out there. But what do you think, guys? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, guys, and I will be back, I promise. This is Larry, signing off. Keep looking up. Take care.